During our blind date, Nora twirled in a red dress, but her first words were a request for me to buy 2 apartments. One for our future home and another for her brother as a dowry. I gritted my teeth and agreed, but what I didn't expect was to find my brother-in-law tangled with a woman in my own marriage bed. Even more absurd was what happened at the deadly confrontation. My mother-in-law, with tears in her eyes, asked, "Noah, your brother-in-law needs a house for his wedding. Can you transfer your marriage property to him to help?" Nora, draped over me, pouted and said, "Honey, we can always delay the wedding." The room fell into stunned silence, and I turned to look at the quiet beauty beside my brother-in-law. "Miss, I heard you don't have a brother? How about we try something? Skip the middleman." The sycamore leaves on the park bench swirled down gently, brushing Luna's slightly rounded belly. I carefully wrapped the wool scarf tighter around her, covering her exposed neck. "Are you cold?" My fingers brushed against her warm skin, and the feeling of security deepened in my chest. She smiled and shook her head, her fingers interlaced with mine. The diamond ring on her 4th finger gleamed in the weak autumn sunlight. This piece was the result of that fateful, deadly confrontation 2 years ago, when everything turned upside down. "What's wrong?" She followed my gaze. Not far away, Nora was sitting on another bench, wearing a red dress I recognized, speaking urgently to a man in a suit, gesturing with her fingers. The man frowned, attempting to interrupt, but ultimately just waved his hand in frustration and walked off, leaving without a second glance. Nora stood frozen, fists clenched, a lock of her carefully styled hair hanging loose, looking defeated. She suddenly looked up, her gaze locking onto our intertwined hands, her eyes fixed on the way I was gently protecting Luna's belly. That expression, full of disbelief, seemed to ask why. Why? I tightened my grip on Luna's hand and turned, disappearing into the flow of people in the park. I didn't look back. The answer lay in that banquet, where Nora and her vampiric family had ripped apart the truth in front of me. A few months ago, the new 3-bedroom apartment on the 20th floor of the city center finally rid itself of the last lingering smell of formaldehyde. The huge floor-to-ceiling windows opened up to a view of the city lights, sparkling like a river of stars. I leaned against the cold glass, the excitement of becoming a man with a family still simmering in my chest, when my phone suddenly rang with an ear-piercing sound. "Noah! Come home now!" Nora's voice screeched through the phone, her background filled with the sound of a toilet flushing. "I'm in so much pain." "What's wrong, baby? Did you fall?" My heart skipped a beat. "Cramps! I'm about to pass out," she cried, her voice breaking. "You've got 5 minutes to get home. If you're late, I'm not done with you." My heart dropped as I turned to the side, trying to explain calmly. "Baby, it's too far, I can't make it in 5 minutes. I'll drive as fast as I can, okay?" "Excuses. You don't love me. You don't care about me." The phone was abruptly cut off, leaving a buzzing tone in my ears. I slammed my foot on the gas pedal, running a red light. It still took me almost 20 minutes to reach the apartment. Nora was curled up on the couch, her face pale, sweat beading on her forehead. When she saw me, her anger exploded. "See? 20 minutes! You didn't even care that I was dying at your doorstep." I'm sorry. I immediately shifted into my role as a personal heating pad and massage therapist, rubbing her small belly with warm hands, gentle enough not to hurt her. "Next time, I'll stay closer to the wedding apartment, ready to come whenever you call, okay?" She turned her face away, scoffing, "You're just good at sweet talking." I spent nearly half an hour soothing her before she reluctantly opened her eyes. She noticed the new apartment key on the coffee table, and her expression softened slightly. Seizing the opportunity, I dashed to the kitchen to make ginger tea and fed it to her spoon by spoon. I massaged her until late at night, and finally she groaned, saying she felt a little better. My body ached from exhaustion, and knowing I had a big client meeting in the morning, I hurried to the bathroom to freshen up. Just as the hot water washed away my fatigue, I felt the mattress dip. Nora rolled over to me, elbowing me in the ribs. "Honey, I suddenly really want the Wei Yang wontons. I saw them on TikTok. I'm craving them so much." The clock on the wall showed the hands overlapping at 12. That restaurant was in the northern food street, a good 40-minute drive away. "Tomorrow, I'll get them for you in the morning. We can have them fresh for breakfast," I said, my eyelids heavy with sleep. Tomorrow? She shot up, her voice rising an octave. No, now. You promised me back then. You'd do anything. Now you can't even go buy me wontons? Look at the boyfriends on TikTok. They wash their girlfriends' feet, run 3 streets at midnight to buy barbecue. You? You have no money and don't even care about me. I'm so pretty, and I'm with you, but you still don't appreciate me. The word appreciate slapped me like a backhand. I stared at her beautiful face, twisted with anger, and a surge of frustration boiled up in me. But I knew better than to argue with a woman on her period. I gave in and climbed out of bed. Fine, I'll go. I drove through the night, my frustration building with every mile. When I reached the Wei Yang restaurant, I found it locked up tight, even though TikTok said it was open all night. I sent Nora a photo of the closed restaurant. Immediately, the phone rang, and her voice screeched through. Noah, are you trying to fool me? TikTok said they're open 24 hours. You didn't even go, did you? That was the last straw. I drove for 40 minutes. The door's locked. I even sent you a photo. Believe it or not. My voice was filled with fury. You're yelling at me. She screamed. Noah, if you don't bring me those wontons, don't even bother coming back. Get out. The phone line went dead, the harsh tone piercing my eardrums. I slammed my fist on the steering wheel, the car horn echoing through the empty streets. There was no way I was going back. I drove aimlessly, like a stray dog kicked out of its home. I was stunned, almost frozen in place. It wasn't just surprise, it was the sheer force of the shock. I stared at the scene in front of me, trying to process what I was seeing, but my mind couldn't catch up. Nora was sitting at the table with a man, both of them laughing and drinking beer as if everything was perfectly normal. But it wasn't just the fact that she was drinking with him. It was the fact that this man was the one I'd seen with her in my wedding bed. The sight of them together twisted something deep inside me. Why did you lie to me, Nora? My voice was barely a whisper, though the anger bubbling up inside me threatened to explode. She looked at me, her eyes wide with shock, but I could see something in her expression. The realization that maybe, just maybe, this was something she could no longer hide. The night had only just begun to reveal its true horror. The man she was with wasn't just some random stranger, it was my brother-in-law, Kai. He was no stranger to me, but this was beyond what I could ever have imagined. When I saw him there, a bitter taste filled my mouth. I wanted to confront him, to scream, to demand answers, but I could only feel the rage rising. Kai, my own brother-in-law, was the one sharing my wife's bed. I felt as if my whole world had been turned upside down. Nora must have known I was boiling with rage, but instead of defending herself, she just stood there, her eyes shifting nervously between me and Kai. She opened her mouth, but the words that came out were more of an excuse than an apology. Don't get angry, Noah, it's not what you think, she said, her voice weak and trembling. I stared at her, the anger in me simmering to a boil. Not what I think. You think this is all just a misunderstanding. She hesitated, then looked at the floor, unable to meet my eyes. I was no fool, I could see it all too clearly. The betrayal was undeniable. Not just from her, but from Kai too. They had crossed a line I could never have imagined. And yet, here we were, sitting at the same table, pretending everything was normal. Nora's voice broke the silence again. Noah, please. I didn't mean for this to happen. It just happened. Just happened. My voice cracked as I finally let the truth sink in. You've been lying to me this whole time. I don't even recognize you anymore, Nora. The tension in the room was unbearable, thick and suffocating. I wanted to leave, to walk away from it all, but I couldn't move. Every part of me was screaming for answers, but all I got was silence. Things didn't get better from there. The conversation quickly turned to business. Nora's family had begun talking about the wedding preparations. But it wasn't just that. It was the way they were subtly steering the conversation, pushing for something I couldn't ignore. Actually, Noah, Nora's mother began, her tone suddenly shifting. There's one more thing we need to discuss. You see, we've been thinking about Kai's future. I felt the hairs on the back of my neck rise. What were they talking about? Nora was right there, but she said nothing, just standing there as her family moved the conversation forward. I had no idea what was coming, but I had a bad feeling. Nora's father, mother, took a deep breath before continuing. We've been discussing Kai's future with him. He's a good boy, But he's just started working and doesn't have enough money to buy a house. You know how it is these days, house prices are sky high. A cold, sinking feeling settled in my chest. I could see where this was headed. My mind was already racing, trying to anticipate what they would ask next. Nora's voice was sweet but sharp. So Noah, I think it's time we discuss the wedding gifts and a little extra for Kai. He's my brother after all. You know, he's been such a good sport about everything. She smiled sweetly, but I could feel the pressure mounting. I clenched my fists under the table. Wait, are you asking me for more money? Oh Noah, Nora said, her voice taking on a slightly pleading tone. Kai's been helping with the wedding plans. He's been so supportive. And you know how important family is? Her mother nodded in agreement, looking at me as if it was the most reasonable thing in the world. I didn't know whether to laugh or scream. My mind was racing. How much are we talking about? I asked, my voice strained. Mother smiled thinly. It's not just about the wedding, son. We're thinking about a house for Kai too. He's young, just starting out. But he'll need support. Don't you think it's time to help him out? I stared at him. Then at Nora, who was looking at me expectantly, her smile practically glued to her face. The absurdity of it all hit me like a punch to the stomach. They were asking for money. More than just money. It was about control. About manipulating me into taking responsibility for something I hadn't even agreed to. I knew it. The moment I stepped into this family's world, it was never about me or Nora. It was always about what I could give them. Luckily, Luna is a sensible and understanding girl, Mrs. Mother quickly added, wiping away non-existent tears. She's willing to pay half of the house price. As for the rest, she looked at me eagerly. Noah, could you help Kai out for now? Can you? Please, we really need your help. Kai will pay you back once he makes money. I froze, my chopsticks suspended in mid-air. 1 or 2 million for a house, and half of that was an astronomical number. Help out? Kai, that lazy good, for nothing, had nothing to offer. I glanced at Luna. She looked just as stunned and confused, clearly unaware of what was going on. Aunt. I put down my chopsticks and tried to keep my voice steady. To marry Nora, we've already emptied out our savings for the house, the renovation, and the dowry. We can't spare a single penny. That's okay. Nora immediately jumped in, as if she had been waiting for me to say that. She leaned in closer, almost pressing against me, her breath sweet as she spoke. Honey, how about this? Let's transfer the title of the new house to Kai first so he and Luna can use it for their wedding. Our wedding can be postponed, right? Once Kai and Luna are settled, we can marry later. My mind exploded. First, it was shock at this outrageous request, followed by an overwhelming wave of anger. I snapped my head toward Nora. She was smiling, as if this was the most normal thing in the world. Transfer the house title? To your brother? My voice was as cold as ice. Nora, are you seriously joking? What do you mean, your house? Nora's face darkened, and she pulled her hand away from my arm. Once we're married, it's joint property. I'm entitled to half of it. That's something we deal with after marriage. I interrupted her sharply. Noah, you're being unreasonable. Mother cut in, his face hardening. How beautiful is our Nora? She had countless suitors, many of them rich and powerful. You marry her, and Kai is your brother too. What's the big deal helping him out? Why be so petty? Exactly. Kai chimed in, puffing out his chest. Brother-in-law, it's just one house. My sister is so beautiful and married you. Don't you think she's worth a house? Besides, Luna is paying half and I'll pay you back for the rest. Can we just write an IOU? He made a gesture as if reaching for pen and paper. I looked at this family so self-righteous, pushing me from all sides, and everything I had bottled up over the past few months exploded. The humiliation, the anger, the disgust, it all came pouring out like a volcano. Bang! I slammed my palm onto the heavy wooden table. The bowls and plates jumped up in the air, and everyone at the table froze in shock. The room fell silent in an instant. I stood up so suddenly that the force almost knocked the chair over. I pointed directly at Nora, my voice trembling with uncontrollable rage but clear as a bell. Nora! I've been working my ass off for the past few months, pouring my heart into preparing for this wedding. I've been running around for everything, making sacrifices. And now you and your entire family are trying to scheme against me? Trying to take my house and give it to your brother? So, I'm supposed to marry you and Kai is just some middleman, huh? I spun toward Kai, my finger nearly poking him in the nose. Kai! How dare you sit here and speak? You're a lazy bum. That Apple phone in your hand? I bought it. You don't think about how to be self-sufficient, only how to live off your sister's blood, to trade her marriage for your own carefree life. Do you have any dignity left? Kai turned pale, his lips quivering, instinctively glancing at Luna for support. I was on fire. My finger shot toward his parents, each word like a dagger. And you too. You've got it all figured out, huh? You've raised a son and a daughter but didn't teach them the right way. You treat your daughter like a cash cow, thinking you can sell her to secure your son's future. Do you really think you're sitting on a golden egg? Noah! You bastard! Nora screamed, tears streaming down her face. She grabbed a teacup from the table and hurled it at me. The cup brushed past my shoulder and shattered against the wall. The room was eerily silent, except for Nora's muffled sobs and her father panting as he held his chest. In the chaos, something in my mind sparked. I looked past the enraged Nora and the pale Kai, my gaze locking onto the girl sitting next to him, who was just as shocked and confused. I took a deep breath, forcing myself to calm down, my voice cutting through the tension with unsettling calm. Luna. Everyone, including the crying Nora, looked at me in surprise. I met Luna's shocked and confused gaze and spoke slowly, each word precise. Do you have a younger brother? Luna was completely bewildered, shaking her head instinctively. I forced out a cold, determined smile, my voice clear and resolute. I have a car, a house, and the dowry is negotiable. Luna, would you like to try something with me? I glanced at Kai, whose face had turned ghostly pale, and raised my voice sharply, like a sword cutting through the silence. No more middlemen. Noah! Damn you! Kai exploded like a firecracker, grabbing my collar, his eyes wild with fury. His fist was raised high. Let go! I glared at him, my voice low but filled with resolve. You throw that punch, and it'll cost you 50,000. Are you willing to pay that? Kai froze, his fist hanging in the air. His fierce expression melted into one of weak fear. He stared at me, his throat working, but he couldn't bring himself to strike. Nora rushed forward, grabbing my arm, crying out, Noah, are you insane? You bastard! Explain yourself. What do you mean by this? I jerked my arm away from her, not looking at anyone else. My eyes locked onto Luna's. Her initial shock had faded, and her eyes now held a mix of emotions: disbelief at the farce before her, disappointment in Kai, and a flicker of light, like fog lifting. Luna? I asked again, my voice firm and inviting. Under the disbelieving gaze of Kai and the shrill screams of Nora, Luna nodded slowly, her expression determined. I walked around the table, grabbed her cool wrist, and pulled her up from her seat. Her hand trembled slightly in mine, but she didn't pull away. With everyone frozen in place, with Nora's hysterical wails echoing behind us, I walked out of the suffocating room, pulling Luna with me. The heavy door slammed behind us, cutting off the chaos. The hallway was quiet, so quiet that I could hear my heartbeat pounding in my ears. I released her wrist, took a long, deep breath, as if trying to rid myself of all the poison inside. Luna stood before me, silently watching me, her eyes full of mixed emotions. Do I have something on my face? I fumbled awkwardly, feeling her gaze on me. She didn't speak at first. Then, slowly, the corners of her lips curled up, forming a soft, genuine smile. No, I just didn't expect you to be so bold. Her smile loosened the tension inside me, and I blushed, feeling a little foolish. I drove her to the entrance of her neighborhood. The night was deep, and the streetlights stretched her shadow long across the pavement. She opened the car door but didn't get out right away. She turned back, her clear eyes shining brightly in the dim light, and asked seriously, Noah, when you said, we'll try, were you serious? My heart skipped a beat. The words I'd said at the table had been a desperate reaction, a last-ditch attempt. But now, looking into her serious eyes, everything about that moment felt clear: the lightness, the pain in her expression, the way she smiled. It all made sense. I took a deep breath, meeting her gaze, and nodded seriously. I'm serious. Kai. He. Before I could finish, a warm, sweet scent enveloped me, and her lips, soft and decisive, pressed firmly against mine. My mind went blank. Every thought melted away, and my blood rushed to the point of contact. Time seemed to freeze. She pulled back slightly, breathless, her cheeks flushed, but her eyes were burning with something more intense. "Actually, I've known what kind of person he was for a while," she whispered, a soft laugh escaping her lips. "I just didn't want to face it. I tried to fool myself. He brought me here today to talk about buying the wedding house. Hee." She smiled bitterly, but with relief. The streetlight cast a soft glow on her face, and I could no longer resist. I pulled her into my arms tightly. She was so fragile, so brave, and yet she filled my empty heart with something real. "We'll try," I whispered in her ear, my voice full of resolve and security I hadn't known before. 2 years later, the sycamore leaves in the park still spun in the air. I carefully protected Luna's baby bump, her soft fingers curling into mine. Not far off, an empty bench seemed to carry the weight of Nora's resentful gaze. Some people will never understand love isn't a calculated transaction, and marriage isn't a bank for helping your brother. They drown in the mire of supporting their brother, mistaking family ties as responsibility, and in the end, it's only their own lives they ruin. Luckily, I broke free. And luckily, I caught that light shining in the corner of a late-night convenience store,